So the perfect bedtime routine. So right? We talked about perfectionism and whether it's perfect or not. So I know I've used the word perfect for both of these, and there's flexibility in that, right? Because the goal is to go for good enough. That's really with ADHD, because we can be perfectionists, 100% me, and I know a lot of us. And so when we're doing these things, this is the perfect thing for an ADHD brain. Not necessarily you've got to do these 10 things exactly this way or it's not good enough, right? So that to start out with the perfect bedtime routine, we want to start out with the why. Why does that matter to you? Why is this important? Anytime you're doing anything, it's better to not just go through the motions, right? Why do you want a bedtime routine? Why does that matter to you? What would that do for you? Think about that. How would that affect your life? How would it affect your ADHD symptoms? When we look at ADHD and the symptoms, there are people that actually score higher on ADHD symptoms that don't have ADHD, that have lack of sleep. So if you're saying, hey, I really want to manage the traits that aren't helpful for me, sleep is going to be one of those awesome things, in tandem with exercise. That's another thing that can really target the brain. Because remember, with our brains, part of ADHD is a difference in regulation of norepinephrine and dopamine and serotonin and chemicals. And so by getting good sleep, you're giving your brain the best chance at regulating those, because there's also a benefit to ADHD and how we can get a surplus of dopamine and hyper focus on things when people are already tired, right? So we want our brain, we want to be able to have intention over our brain and have a little bit more control of what it does. And so think about why sleep matters to you and why a bedtime routine matters, what you want to get out of that. And that can look different for everybody. One person might want to set intentions before bed and do a gratitude list. Another person, they just want to get to bed on time. So they don't want a journal, right? You might just want to have something that can kind of calm your nervous system down where it's 10 p.m. and you can actually go to sleep. And so the point of your bedtime routine is to be able to sleep at a certain time, whereas somebody else might have more. And neither one is better or worse, right? Some other things with sleep is our spinal fluid. This is kind of crazy. Our spinal fluid, when we sleep, actually can go in and clean out the toxins in our brain. Isn't it? Like I learned that this week. Our spinal fluid, literally, when we sleep, gets released into our brain to kind of flush out those toxins. And so there's a lot of, I'm not going to necessarily go into all the benefits of sleep, and that could do that at another call. This is really like the routine, and understand why, right? Why are you doing this? What matters? Now, when we're looking at a bedtime routine, what I want to start off with is, if your bedtime routine is good enough, do we have anybody who's always growing, always learning, always wanting to do better, find the best thing, anybody like that that's just this eternal learner? So that can be a beautiful thing. And if your bedtime routine is good enough, it's okay to leave it. I know it sounds weird hearing from a coach. If your bedtime routine is 80-90% of good enough, that's great. Think about that. Have an 80-90% routine that you follow for your life. I mean, that's awesome. And so there's a saying that, if you've heard this, if you're not growing, you're dying. Have you heard of that saying before? This is my personal opinion. I don't like that, because it's okay to be content. We've been like pushing and growing and learning and taking every training. I mean, we're curious. We're eternal curious. We're always learning. And so it's okay to be content. I think, well, I guess you could argue that learning to be content is growth. You don't always have to be striving to hit this, most efficient, what is the perfect thing? What should I be doing? What am I not doing? So the point is if your bedtime routine is checking the box for what you need it to do, you don't have to do an overhaul, tweak a couple things and leave it how it is, and take that hyper focus and put it on to your business or lead generation or something else, versus, man, I got to get a better sleep routine. I got to get a better bedtime routine. I've got to study this. I've got to learn this. I've got to get this set up, right? So again, if it's good enough, leave it. And being content is a really wonderful thing sometimes. And then being very growth oriented and learning and change, that's really wonderful sometimes too. So you want a balance of both, versus if you're like me and you took it literally, you're constantly growing and you're constantly learning and absorbing information. Because if you feel like you're not, it's like that shark that you're swimming underwater and you have to have water over your gills or you're going to die. So you got to constantly be growing and changing and all that stuff. And so I don't know if this resonates. This was me to a T, and that's what I want to throw out there. And this is what I've seen in a lot of coaching clients is some stuff can be left alone or tweaked, and then some stuff we want to change, right? So a sleep routine, a bedtime routine can be really, really good for us in a lot of ways. The other precursor I want to say is if you have insomnia. Does anybody have insomnia in here? Okay. So one, studies show for ADHD and neurodiversity, our circadian rhythms are delayed by 2 hours. And so in general, not everybody, every one of us, but in general, our sleep schedule, we're going to be delayed by 2 hours. We're going to get tired 2 hours later, and we're going to maybe get going a little bit, maybe 2 hours later in the morning. And so if you do a sleep routine, and I've had insomnia too, there were months where I had some, mental health stuff going on, which we figured out, hey, it was OCD. So now it doesn't happen. It's great. I was getting like a couple hours a night, and it sucked. And so I want to speak to insomnia for a second, or if you just have a night like that, there's actually studies that show if you're not asleep but you're resting, that it actually is restorative. And so if you have insomnia and you do this great routine and you do it all, and then you lay down and you can't go to sleep, instead of, oh my God, I got to get to sleep. Oh my gosh, what time is it? Oh, now I'm going to get 6 hours. Now I'm going to get 5 hours. Now I'm going to get 4 hours. I see people smiling. Know that you're resting, so rest your body. Don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. Your body will rest when it needs to, and accept it as is. And that's going to calm your nervous system down. You're actually more likely to go to sleep. And so if you just lay there with your eyes closed or you listen to soft music and you rest, that's okay. Let that be good enough if you're not able to sleep in the moment. And that still is really, really good for our brains. So that is just one of the precursors if anybody's got insomnia, because I've had that, to think about that. And then also it's our melatonin can vary in where it's released or how it's released, especially if you're on the autism spectrum. There are some people that will go a night or two without sleeping. I mean, our brains can vary. And so again, just work on resting. Now they do say that getting, the best time to go to bed is between 9 to 11. If you want to have really deep REM sleep, I mean, that's what the studies say, right? I don't know if it's ADHD specifically. I mean, no, it's not on that. So if you can time it where you go to sleep between 9 and 11, ideally that's going to be best. If you can't, or your brain works different, don't worry about it. So one of the things when we talk about melatonin and then we kind of go into this perfect bedtime routine, when we talk about melatonin, what can happen when we're looking at screens is it can prevent melatonin, especially like blue light. It can prevent that release of melatonin, which is the thing that makes us tired. And so if you're on your screen right before bed and then you're having trouble sleeping, it may be because there's not melatonin. And so one of the last week when we talked about the perfect morning routine, I had two things that I told you 100%, for most people work really well, which is waiting to turn your phone on until you get 15 minutes of movement and something to eat, right? That's it. And then that's going to set you up for the day. And that works for a lot of people. So I'm going to give you a very simple thing that I'd recommend for almost everybody. Again, there could be variables. And that is to turn off your phone, if you can, an hour before bed. That's what they say, an hour before bed. So if you're writing down, you're crafting your routine right now, have your phone off an hour before bed, because it emits a blue light, and that is going to delay the release in melatonin. And so you could be in bed and do everything right for the routine, but if you're on your phone and you're not having the melatonin, you're not going to feel tired. Now, if you're on your phone and you do feel tired and you need it, again, there's a variable, go for it. This is if you just are not able to go to bed by the time that you need to, there's a very good chance that the hormones and the chemicals are not being produced because of that blue light. You can get blue light filter glasses. I've tried those before. That can be an option. So having your phone off, having screens off. You guys know I have a Christmas light timer on my Wi-Fi, and so that Christmas light timer has all the Wi-Fi and the modem plugged in, and at 10 o'clock every night, all of it goes off. So if I'm in the middle of a show, if I'm doing something, whatever, if I'm not working, boom, it's off. and I've told you I've even put a piece of duct tape over it when my willpower was not very strong, because then you're creating all these extra steps to still be on the computer, right? Or to still work. And so that's going to kind of get that routine. Now, remember, we do well with structure. We do well with structure. We don't do well with a lot of rigidity in the structure. So if you have a couple benchmarks or a couple things that you keep consistent, that can be really helpful, versus having a whole list of stuff you have to do before bed. Now, speaking of that, if you are leaving certain things that feel hard or you might procrastinate to after you turn off the TV, good luck, right? Well, I'm going to turn off the TV at 10 and then I'm going to clean up the dishes. Yeah, right. You're going to be not want to turn the TV off, right? I've been there, or I've got to take the trash or anything like that. So a good rule is, kind of first figure out when you want your bedtime to be, what the ideal time is, and then you want to start winding down at least an hour before. You might need to, depending on how you operate and if you have kids or how that works. But after that 10 o'clock time or whatever time you set, if the chores aren't done by then, do them tomorrow. Don't beat yourself up and sit there on the couch and try to motivate. No, when it's 10, you're done. You let go of the guilt, the shame's over, and here's this guilt-free time to just let go. So have that boundary with yourself. It doesn't get done by whatever that time is that you shut stuff off. Then it happens tomorrow, no matter what. And then just give yourself a break, So that would be one thing. Shower, right? Remember, we can have sensory stuff. So you may want to bathe before that 10 p.m. time. If anybody's procrastinated a shower before, believe it or not, we pick up on sensory stuff. And so water can be a change, right? A transition, hot water, cold water, that kind of stuff. So if you're a person that a shower is a sensory thing for you, again, don't leave that till after 10. Don't leave anything you're gonna procrastinate. So we've set our bedtime, right? You've got the screens off at 10. Now, here's something to think about with ADHD, with transitions. That is something that some of us can have a harder time with, and that could be transitioning from work to personal time, from personal time to work, just starting the day, right? And it can also happen when you're in go mode, and then all of a sudden you're supposed to slow down and go to bed, right? What do you mean? I have this cool little computer that's a dopamine machine that I can look at anytime with anything that I'm curious about in the whole world, and my cute puppy is the background, right? And what do you mean? I'm just supposed to put this down and then go lay down and sit with my thoughts that are racing? That sounds terrible, right? And this is just me, right? If you don't have that, then good for you. But this is a lot of us, right? And so what we don't want is to just take away the things that are giving us dopamine when we're already a little bit lower and then expect to rely on discipline. And so to ease that transition, you're going to want to have stuff that's fun that you can replace this with, whether it's a book, a magazine, an adult coloring book, a puzzle. If it's something you want, again, some of you might be able to put your phones away. Some of you are going to need something. A book that's non-work related, give yourself a break. Figure out who you are outside of work. Like, put that aside. We really want to just develop as a human being, unless, again, that's really fun for you. And so have something fun to go to when you put your phone away, instead of you're just ripping something away that gives you dopamine and now you're supposed to be disciplined. And then you get up in the morning and then you got to work and you're back to the grind. I mean, so have something waiting for you, or hot tea, right? Or a hot bath, or something that is going to give you dopamine, or hug your pets or be with your partner, anything like that. So really think about something that you're going to give yourself as a trade when you take away screens and a phone, and you're going to have a much better chance of turning those screens off, getting that natural melatonin flowing, and being able to go to bed at the time that you want to. Speaking of turning your phone off or turning screens off, when you set a boundary with yourself and you violate that boundary, you are more likely to do that again the next time. So if you say, okay, I'm going to turn off at 10 and it's 10:01 and it's 10:05 and it's 10:06, you're more likely, and it's going to get easier and easier to break that. So if this is something that's really important to you and you're in that moment where you can kind of rationalize either way, listen to that little voice and keep that promise with yourself if you can. If you miss it, right? If you miss that time, Try again the next day. I know the word try is not loved by some places. Go ahead and try it. Practice it. We're going for something that's sustainable, that you can do for the rest of your life. If you don't get it the first time, or you get 5 out of 7 nights, hey, you got 5 out of 7 nights. And so a lot of times in achievement stuff or whatever, we talk about never fall off, no excuses, make it happen. You got to want it so bad. We don't talk about, so it's all about how to not fall off. What we don't talk about is how to get back on. And I would say, as a coach, focusing more on when you fall off, getting back on, and not going to all or nothing. Well, it didn't work for me, I'm just not going to do it anymore. Or well, I didn't do it, I failed, let me start again Monday, instead of, okay, I didn't hit it today, I'm going to do it tomorrow, let me practice tomorrow. So in this sense, I would say it's okay to try if you're really trying, right? And if you're not hitting it, it's okay. It's okay, because if you keep attempting it and you keep practicing and you keep watching for clues of how to make it easier, then you don't give up and you will get it. I mean, most of us can do just about anything we put our minds to. So a couple things, like when we're taking away the phone, a lot of us can have sensory stuff, right? We're more sensitive to noise, to chewing. You ever had that when you're in a training? Yeah, I've seen. Oh, buddy, yeah. I'm just not going to lunch and learn. So it's just we can't, right? A lot of us. So if you're more sensitive to noise, to texture, to smells, that kind of stuff, we also get the positive side of that. So because we are more sensitive to that stuff, when you give yourself good sensory stuff, it can create so much joy and happiness in us that other people who don't have those sensitivities don't get the full grasp of how wonderful that is. Because we take in, a lot of us, especially if you're on the spectrum, we take in 70% more stimulus than a non-ADHD brain. That's autism. Now, there's a lot of overlap with ADHD. You might not take in 70%, but you're going to take a lot more than a non-ADHD person. And so when you have soft blankets and you have gentle lighting and you have lamps or even Christmas lights, that can be fun too. Soft sheets, like a good mattress, your temperatures where you need it to be, your pajamas or whatever you're wearing is not restrictive. You might have a noise machine or gentle music. You're gonna want to get in bed. I mean, it's a little sensory capsule, of just the most. You're in a little cloud that smells like lavender. I mean, you're gonna want to get in there, right? Another thing, this is really great, is a weighted blanket. Has anybody used that or heard of that? So a weighted blanket, this is game changer for me and for some other people. So it's actually a weighted blanket, and it gives the sensation that you're kind of being hugged, and it can help a lot with anxiety or PTSD or things like that. And that weight, it's almost like, when you swaddle a baby and they calm down when they're babies. That's a little bit of the concept of a weighted blanket, and you can get them at different varying degrees of weights. And some people might not like it, right? Because our sensory stuff is going to vary. Some people love hugs, some people don't want to be touched. And so if you haven't tried that, you might play with it. And if not, you can give it to somebody else, however it can be. We've got some people in the comments that had a really good time. So make that like a nice sensory place for you, whatever that looks like. And then what I'll say too is just to kind of go back a little bit about the screens. So cortisol, stress hormones, what they do is they actually release dopamine. So another point that I forgot to put in there about the value of maybe turning off screens. Is there anybody here who knew you shouldn't click on something, or knew you shouldn't look it up, or shouldn't watch it because it was kind of stressful, but you just couldn't? You're just really curious. Has anybody had that, where it's like, oh, this is kind of clickbait, or this is, let me learn about games. I mean, I do that. I don't know if anybody, there's just random stuff I'm super interested in, and it can create stress for me. Or look at this article. Look what's happening politically, or there's anything, right? It creates dopamine, and we can be more towards go to that. What that's going to do, it's going to rev up your nervous system. It's going to be much more likely for you to calm down. Because think of that from an animalistic standpoint. We're kind of, it sounds weird, we're kind of going unconscious in a way, like we're not as conscious. You have to feel safe to be unconscious, I guess. It's a weird thing to say. And so by removing the screens at least an hour before, we can calm our nervous system down, and you're not looking up gangs or what it's like to live in prison or how World War I started or all those kind of interesting things that some of us can look at or look at. Um, so uh, that I just want to throw that in. Now, has anyone heard of revenge time procrastination before? So this is common with ADHD. This is a thing. And so if revenge time procrastination is if you are using discipline all throughout the day to maintain your work and life, and you're using discipline and willpower, your impulse control is going to be more weak towards the end of it. It's almost like you've got a certain amount of dopamine, like fuel, to kind of stop yourself. If you've used up a lot of that and there's not much left, it's going to be harder to stop yourself from doing certain things or staying up late, or and it also might be the one time that things are quiet that you have to yourself. And you might also be looking for stimulation because you need more dopamine, that kind of stuff. And so revenge time procrastination is a thing. And if you're having that continually where you get to bed and you just keep procrastinating, you stay up way too late and you're doing special interests, and it's the one time you have to yourself to do fun stuff, that's an indicator that you have not put that in your day. That's what that means. It means you are not giving yourself fun time. You are using discipline and structure and rules and work all day. You're not giving yourself a break in the middle of the day. You're not pursuing special interests. You may be masking your symptoms. So if you're having that issue, it's not a let me push myself harder and beat myself up for not going to bed on time. It's a wow, I need to give my brain a little bit more time during the day of freedom so it's not starving for it when it's bedtime. And that's revenge time procrastination. It's a thing. Like, you could Google it. Yeah. So revenge time procrastination. And so if you're continually not being able to go to bed because you need to go do stuff that's fun, you got to make time for that during your day, instead of making it up. And then, because the thing is, when you do that and you get less sleep, you're going to have more trouble like getting dopamine, and then you're going to get in this cycle, right? And then you might be more prone during the day with less sleep to go to food that you know is not good for you, or leaving stuff to the last minute, or you might have brain fog or memory stuff, or all this stuff. And then it's just this cycle where now it takes you longer to get stuff done, or you have to push yourself harder, more discipline. And then now you're back at revenge time procrastination because it took everything to do this thing that would have taken you half the amount of time if you weren't sleep deprived. So make sure you got some fun in there, and that you allow yourself some kind of break during the day to just be, and not, as we say, mask your symptoms where you're kind of covering it up. You're being super early so you're not late. You're not stimming, you're holding still, and then you might have some anxiety that manifests in your body because you're not letting yourself move, right? We really need that time for our brain to open up and be able to play. A couple more things in the daytime that scientifically makes getting sleep easier. One is getting sun. That can be really helpful. That vitamin D, that can regulate mood and energy and all kinds of stuff. Some type of movement or exercise. If you get up and you're on the computer all day and then you go to bed, your body's not tired yet. So even if it's a little walk or a stretch or something, that can be helpful. Like we said, a fun or some kind of break. No caffeine after noon. If you're sensitive, you might play with that. So that's something, because a lot of us can drink caffeine, and so you may play with that a little bit. Or if you're on stimulants, there might be a set time that you know that if you take it after that, it's going to be harder to sleep. And then another thing is regulating our nervous system. So this is somewhere, and I'm just going to share, right? I have PTSD, I have OCD, I got a party in my head, right? You got all kinds of thoughts, and I'm on the autism spectrum, I have ADHD. So with ADHD, we have the abundance of thoughts. We have 10 times the amount of thoughts as someone without ADHD, right? And then if you have PTSD, if you have OCD, if you are bipolar, anything, if you just had trauma, now we're pouring some gasoline, now you might have 20,000 thoughts, especially if you have the inattentive type, which is more common in women, not necessarily all women, right? Or some men have the inattentive type. That's going to be, as we've talked about before, the hyperactive type is that you're moving, right? You're shaking your leg, all that stuff. You see it externally. The inattentive type is the body's calm, but all that movement's on the inside. And so if you have the inattentive type, you might have it even more so. So if you have this whole stream of thoughts, what's really, really important is to have some kind of notebook by your bed where you can write down whatever those things are so you don't forget. That is huge. It seems simple, but if you got all this stuff in your head, write it down. Oh man, I got to get the keys tomorrow. And also, right, because we have like our working memory works differently and can sometimes be impaired, or just we can't hold some of the short-term stuff. Once you lay down and slow down, now all that stuff you forgot might come out. So you really want to get if that's the first time you've slowed down for the day, you really want to get that all out on a notepad or something. And then when you have it part of your thing, that when you go to work in the morning, you grab the notepad. So then you can train your brain, hey, put in this notepad and let it go, because you can know that I'm going to look at this tomorrow. So if you have a notepad and you write it in there and then you never look at it again, the next night your brain's going to say, oh, no, you got to keep holding on to this stuff because you didn't look at this yesterday. We're going to forget if you just don't think about this over and over and over again while you're trying to go to sleep, So some of this really is, think of your brain like you're teaching your brain to trust you. You really are. Like, okay, I'm a brain. I'm saying, okay, I trust you. I can let go of this stuff, because those racing thoughts are, they'll get you, right? And again, if we're low on dopamine, thoughts can create cortisol or stress hormone. They can create dopamine. And so we can almost get addicted to negative or jarring thoughts. Because we can get addicted to dopamine, right? And so being able to kind of calm that down is really helpful. What I'll also say with that too is, if you're someone who is in your head a lot, like I am, doing something to get in your body is really helpful. You're not going to think your way out of whatever you're in. You might need to just get in your body. There are veterans with PTSD, and they did this whole thing with surfing, because you have to be in your body, and you have to be present. It was this huge value and healing thing for PTSD, because it got them out of their heads and it got them in their body, and it helped retrain their nervous system. And so if you're somebody who has a lot of anxiety, if your nervous system's revved up, if you're just in your head, take a hot bath, Epsom salt, essential oils, candles, whatever that looks like. Hug your pets, hug your partner, stretch a little bit, whatever it is, smell essential oils, whatever it does to kind of get you out of your head and in your body a little bit more, because that's where you're going to feel a little bit more safe as well. And we can kind of calm down that nervous system, and it's going to be easier to go to sleep. Let me see if I miss anything. And then I'm going to do a recap of kind of like, okay, here's a mock routine, Let me just make sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think I hit everything. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yep, got it. Okay. So to kind of recap, right? Let's say it's bedtime. Let's say I said, hey, let's do summer camp, because that's actually something I'd love to do as an event, where we like go do crafts and go swim and have a bonfire and like all kinds of. That's something I'd like to do in the future, like a really cool thing. We can kind of be kids again. So let's say we're doing that and we're all hanging out, and you can observe my bedtime routine. So it gets close to. Oh, here's one more thing I forgot to. So you want to trigger, right? So if your bedtime's 10, put an alarm on your phone where it goes off every day at 10. You want something, not like you're going to look in the phone, oh man, it's 10:30, I missed it. We want something that says, hey, it's 10. Now, the other thing that you may want to do is put an alarm 5 minutes before 10 as well. And that's going to help with that transition. So it'll go off at 9:55, let's say if it's 10. And then you can say, okay, in 5 minutes, I have to turn off my phone. I'm going to finish what I'm doing, or 10 minutes. It's similar to, because I've worked with kids with special needs, foster care. I mean, any kid, right? If you walk up to a kid and you say, okay, time for bed, give me your iPad, what are they going to do? Most times they're going, if you say, hey, in 5 minutes, I'm coming back and we're going to be done with iPad, and then you're going to go read a book. Okay. So I'm coming back in 5 minutes and I'm going to take your phone. All right. And then you come back in 5 minutes. Hey, great. It's been 5 minutes. Okay. Hand me the iPad. Okay. Let's go get your book. Do that with yourself. Parent yourself, make it easy. Don't rely on this raw discipline or beating yourself up or harshness. I'm telling you, I mean, you can. There's just such an easier way, and it's a more pleasant way of living. So if you're observing me, depending on where I'm at, sometimes if I'm more resistant, I am going to have an alarm 5 minutes before, and then it goes at 10 and the alarm goes off and my Wi-Fi goes click and it's off as well. So I usually at this point I'm used to it, so I know that it's about to come off. If not, I'm like, dang it, okay, it's like there's a parent there for me. And then you might take supplements. So that's one thing. Magnesium is something that can be really helpful for us. So whatever supplements, a fish oil, that can be really good for your brain. So if you have supplements, and we've got a list of that from the ADHD Center, and then you're going to do, brush your teeth, whatever that is, and then a hot bath with Epsom salt. Then stretch a little bit, like loosen your body up. The phone's off, by the way. This is another one. Have your phone, if you choose to turn it off, have it where you can't reach it. So get a different alarm clock besides your phone, because then you're eliminating let me go over to my bedside table and then turn it on, and I'm just going to check one thing. So make it where you have to get out of bed, make it difficult for you to turn on your phone. And I'm going to go just a few more minutes and then we'll go to the Q&A. But make it difficult. Put extra steps in place for the things that you don't want yourself to do. So I'm going to turn off my phone, and then I'm going to plug it in the bathroom, which is, right through the door. Or if you want the phone in the room with you, it's just going to be on the other side of the room where I can't just go turn it on. Right. And then there's an alarm clock that I have that actually mimics a sunrise. So it creates a sunrise in the room. So that's a gradual thing. And then you get your teeth brushed. If you take a bath, whatever, you might stretch a little bit. And then it's the fun part. You can go to a library and get books for free and read about fun stuff, coloring books, Sudoku puzzles, crosswords, hang out with the dogs, play with them, just sit with them for a little bit, whatever it is to kind of help you wind down and feel safe. And then get in your comfy bed with soft sheets and weighted blanket or not a weighted blanket, right, in the temperature that you need to sleep at. And then if there's anything that comes in, journal and put that in out of your head in that journal. One thing that a lot of times I can do as well, and other people can do, if you can think of one thing that you are proud of about yourself that day, that will do wonders, especially with how hard we are on ourselves. So one thing could be, I put the dish away. It could be I drank an extra glass of water. I reassured myself when that seller chose somebody else, and I reassured myself, because you're going to start thinking about that. And then the next day you're going to look for, what do I want to write down tonight about how I was proud of myself and I did this thing. This is where you could do a gratitude list if that's something you want to do as well. You could do any affirmations. You could write down 3 things that would win the day for the next day. If you want to do that, what are the 3 things that if I did these tomorrow, I would win the day? Or what's the one thing? You might set some intentions. You might just kind of set up what you're going to do. Enough. What we really want is for you to say, okay, I can let go now. Tomorrow's going to be good. There's nothing in my head. I'm not going to forget anything. My nervous system's calmed down. I'm comfortable. I'm safe. I can let go and just rejuvenate, So that's what that would look like. And then if you can't sleep, right, you do everything right, and then you got insomnia, you just reassure yourself, and then you rest, and you rest and maybe read a book or do something like that. And then the other thing, like blackout curtains, that can be helpful too if you're sensitive to light. So really, it can be whatever you want it to look like. And I think the biggest things from what I studied and what I've seen with coaching clients is turning the phone off, getting the blue light away from you, unless it doesn't affect you and it helps you before bed. Again, there's always that caveat here. So make sure it's good enough, right? 80%. And then the other thing I'll say too, if you do this routine and you're good for 2 weeks and then it feels really stale and you continually can't make yourself, switch it up. Do a different time. Do a different routine. Stop taking a bath and take a shower. Or if you don't want to do that, do a different book. Or now you do like a different exercise, whatever that is. This concept that we've got to be consistent, we have to do it the same way every day for the rest of our lives, is not sustainable for most of us. And so what I see some people do is if they fall off a certain routine or something, they try to push themselves and grind, and eventually burn out. Versus if you achieve the same objective, it's okay to change it. Be consistent with the intention and the goal. Be flexible with how you get there. And so, for example, and you know this about me, and this is based on studies, right? I'm not the ultimate. I don't do this perfect all the time. I generally have about 3 schedules I follow. So I have about 3 different morning wake up times. When one gets really stale, I move to the next one. And like when that one gets stale, I go to the next one, then I go back to the first one. And so, because we do well with newness, right? Newness creates dopamine, challenge, all those things. And so I'm continually changing how my routine is instead of doing the exact same thing every single time and then beating myself up if I don't. And so know that that's okay. And it's more than okay. It's good. So just a quick example, there are times when I go to bed really early and I wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. and then I lift weights in the morning, and and that's my routine. And then that gets stale and I keep hitting a wall over and over again. And then I sleep in longer and I walk the dogs every morning instead of the evening. And then that gets stale, and then I might go skateboard, or I might go for a run, or I might go hike, or whatever. So switch stuff up if that feels helpful to you, and you know um, still hit the objective, whether it's amount of sleep or time or whatever that looks like. Have a wonderful week. We'll see some of you, if you're an ADHD agents, we'll see you on Thursday to talk more about the accountability and do our cool mastermind. Otherwise, we'll talk to you next Tuesday or in the Facebook group. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day, and hope you get some good sleep. All right, take care.